It's funny, the best ideas always come to me when I'm completely alone, usually in the middle of the night. Tristan's voice was smooth, practiced, rolling over the clinking glasses at the gallery opening. It's a very solitary process, which is why I'm so grateful Zoe is there to handle the, technical stuff. The flash of a photographer's camera bleached the scene for a second, catching the smug curve of his smile. Everyone nodded, captivated. I felt the familiar heat rise in my chest, but I pressed it down, turning it into something cold and sharp. I just smiled back and said, he's a true visionary. Tristan and I met at a workshop on generative art. He had the charisma, the grand pronouncements about disrupting the art world, but he couldn't write a single line of code. I had the skills, the quiet obsession with detail, but the thought of pitching my own work made my stomach clench. He seemed to fit, his words and my work, a perfect symbiosis. I remember our first successful piece, a small digital installation. We celebrated with cheap pizza on the cold floor of our shared studio at 2 a.m., exhausted and electric. It felt like the beginning of everything. The first red flag was a feature in a small online journal. My name was missing. He claimed it was an editorial error, that they'd cut it for space. I was so effusively sorry, buying me an expensive dinner to make up for it, that I let it go. I wanted to believe him. The next 2 years were a blur of creation and ascent. We landed a commission for the lobby of the new Viceroy Hotel in Chicago. We flew to Milan for an art fair, Tristan gliding through the crowds, charming collectors, while I stayed in our booth, explaining the complex algorithms behind the visuals. He called me his secret weapon, his technical genius. It felt good for a while, then the cracks began to show. The money from commissions, which used to be split 50-50, started flowing into a new corporate account Tristan had set up. For tax efficiency, he'd said, smiling, so you don't have to worry about the boring stuff. My payments started coming in late, smaller than I expected. There was always a reason, an unexpected expense, a client delay, a wire transfer fee. He'd rationalize it so smoothly, I'd end up feeling guilty for even asking. The discovery was accidental, a digital misstep. I was searching our shared Google Drive for a tax form and stumbled upon a folder he'd mistakenly synced from his personal cloud. It was titled Project Phoenix. Inside, my blood went cold. There were emails, contracts, and pitch decks for a solo show. His solo show. It featured our entire collaborative portfolio, the Viceroy installation, the Milan pieces, everything, rebranded as the singular vision of Tristan Vance. He'd been shopping it around for 6 months. In emails to gallery owners, he referred to me as his freelance assistant. The betrayal wasn't just about credit. It was a meticulous, calculated erasure. I spent the next 3 weeks in a quiet fury. I used a forensic data recovery tool to pull old file versions from our server, revealing my original creation dates. I cross-referenced the client payments he declared with the actual contracts I found, uncovering a difference of over $120,000. Each new piece of evidence was another layer of skin peeled back, revealing the rot underneath. The breaking point came at the opening of Fractured Light, our largest and most ambitious exhibition. The gallery was packed. A critic from Art Forum was there, the one everyone courted. Our mutual friend, Yara, stood beside Tristan, hanging on his every word. The critic asked him about the source of his inspiration. Tristan laughed, a theatrical sound, and gestured dismissively toward me as I stood by the installation, making a final adjustment. Look, some people are artists and some people are technicians. Zoe is an incredible technician, the best. But vision, the soul of the work, that can't be taught. It has to come from one place. He tapped his chest, a gesture of profound ownership. The critic scribbled in a notepad. Yara nodded in solemn agreement. The air left my lungs. The low hum of the projectors, the murmur of the crowd, it all faded into a single, high-pitched ringing. In that frozen moment, the anger clarified into a plan, not of revenge but of correction. As my eyes scanned the room, I noted a small, overlooked detail. The black dome of a security camera in the corner, its unblinking eye aimed directly at the main installation, and at us. The next morning, I called Ms. Vega. She was an intellectual property lawyer with a reputation for being surgically precise. Her retainer was $15,000, almost everything I had left, but I transferred it without hesitation. For 2 months, we worked. We built a fortress of evidence. Ms. Vega was impressed by my meticulous documentation. One night, my phone buzzed. It was Tristan. Hey, I noticed some weird activity on our shared drive. Did you change passwords? Just want to make sure we're secure. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice was steady. No, must be a system glitch. I'll look into it. It was a close call, a reminder of how fine the line was that I was walking. Our evidence was undeniable. We had 4,712 of my original, time-stamped camera and software files with embedded metadata. We had screen recordings of my workflow in Adobe Illustrator and ZBrush, showing hours of painstaking digital sculpting. We had the Project Phoenix emails. We had bank statements proving the $120,000 he'd diverted. Even had a sworn affidavit from a freelance coder I'd hired to build a custom particle rendering engine for Fractured Light. who confirmed he had only ever corresponded with me. The most ironic piece of evidence came from Tristan himself, a behind-the-scenes video he'd posted on Instagram to promote the show. In it, as he waxed poetic about his creative process, the reflection on his sleek monitor clearly showed me in the background, headphones on, deep in the complex modeling he was taking credit for. The trap was Ms. Vega's idea. She sent Tristan a simple partnership dissolution letter, citing creative differences and offering him a modest buyout for his conceptual contributions. It was designed to appeal to his ego. Took the bait, countering with an outrageous demand for 80% of all assets, thereby formally entangling himself in the very financial records we planned to use against him. We met for the mandatory arbitration in a sterile conference room downtown. Tristan arrived with a junior lawyer, looking more bored than concerned. He gave me a look of pity, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. Ms. Vega began, her voice calm and level. You're here to discuss the equitable dissolution of a creative partnership. Tristan's lawyer launched into a speech about brand value, about how Tristan was the face, and I was hired help. Tristan leaned back, smirking. Then, Ms. Vega began her presentation. First, the financials. A single slide showing the total client payments of $145,000 next to the $25,000 I had received. Tristan's smirk faltered. It was for business development, he stammered, for marketing. His lawyer shuffled his papers, suddenly looking less confident. Then came the killer proof. Ms. Vega played Tristan's Instagram video on the large screen, pausing and zooming in on my reflection in his monitor. She followed it with a rapid succession of my time-stamped files, the coder's affidavit, and the emails where Tristan called me his assistant. Mr. Vance claims to be the artist, Ms. Vega stated, her voice cutting through the silence. We have gigabytes of data proving Ms. Rosales was the sole creator of the work. The only thing Mr. Vance appears to have created was the fiction that it was his. Tristan was pale, his bravado shattered. Looked at me, his eyes wide with a strange mix of fury and disbelief. I met his gaze, my own calm and clear, and said, "You're right. I'm an incredible technician." The fallout was swift. The arbitrator's ruling was a public record, a brutal indictment of fraud and breach of contract. Tristan was ordered to pay me the $95,000 he owed, plus my legal fees. The gallery immediately canceled his upcoming solo show, citing the discrepancies in creative attribution. Yara sent a text 2 days later. I'm sorry, I deleted it without a response. 6 months passed. I saw a photo of him online, tagged by a mutual acquaintance. He was managing a cafe in a suburb I'd never heard of. In the picture, he was standing beside a gleaming espresso machine, wearing a stained apron and that same practiced smile, but his eyes were vacant. My renewal was quieter. I leased a small new studio in a different part of the city. It has a single, enormous window that floods the room with light. It's filled with the quiet hum of my workstation and the smell of fresh coffee. I'm working on my first true solo project, an idea that is entirely my own. There are no late-night phone calls about manufactured crises, no shared drives, no need to fight for a sliver of credit. The piece is more valuable than the money. Last night, I was sketching a concept for a new piece. It's about the nature of vision, how it isn't some lightning strike of genius that happens to one person in the dark. It's about the 1,000 quiet, deliberate hours of work no one ever sees. My process is very solitary now, and finally, it's mine.